The views and opinions expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of Open Sky Radio. Please be advised.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to The Fire You Can't Put Out. With you, as always, is me, Melvin. Hello there. This is for the week ending August 24th, 2013, and I want to thank you for being here with me again. Quite a few news stories, as usual, so we're just going to dive right in. But let me start with this, because if I go into this without mentioning this first, it's going to lead to a lot of confusion. Bradley Manning now wants to be known as Chelsea Manning, and this was announced after he was sentenced. A quote: "As I transition into the next phase of my life, I want everyone to know the real me. I am Chelsea Manning. I am a female." That's what Manning, 25, said in a statement on the NBC News Today show. "Given the way I feel and have felt since childhood, I want to begin hormone therapy as soon as possible," Manning said. "I also request today that you refer to me by my new name and use the feminine pronoun," which is Chelsea. This show will be respecting that wish. And I wanted to start with that because it would have led to a lot of confusion with today's stories, and here's why. Bradley Manning was sentenced this past week, Chelsea Manning, and as often as possible, I'm just going to try to refer to her as either Chelsea Manning or just Manning, because no sooner did the conviction come down or the sentencing come down, and then he wants to be known as Chelsea. And it just makes it really hard to report on this stuff. You with me? All right, Manning was sentenced to 35 years in prison on Wednesday for handing off the WikiLeaks documents, obviously. Manning was not allowed to make a statement when his sentence was handed down by a military judge, Colonel Denise Lynn. Guards quickly hustled him out of the courtroom while at least half a dozen spectators shouted their support. Manning was also dishonorably discharged and demoted from the rank of private first class to private. He was ordered to forfeit all pay and benefits. He was convicted July 19th on 19 counts of espionage. He will most likely serve out his sentence in the United States Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth, Texas. The 1,182 days he spent in confinement since he was arrested in May 2010 will be applied toward his term. Amnesty International immediately called on President Barack Obama to commute Manning's sentence under time served. Under military law, Manning's sentence will be subject to immediate review by Major General Jeffrey Buchanan, the commander of the Military District of Washington. So he's been sentenced, and that sentence could be commuted a little bit by this other commander. And then, of course, at the end of Obama's term, which is when presidents decide to commute or pardon, they generally do it at the very end. One of the exceptions to that rule, of course, was Scooter Libby. As soon as Scooter Libby was convicted and sentenced, Bush commuted his entire sentence. But it's pretty rare. Most of the time, it's something that presidents do on the way out the door. I'd like to say let's wait until the end of Obama's term and see if he commutes Manning's sentence or just forgives him altogether. But it's not bloody likely considering this administration's track record with respect to whistleblowers. And yes, Manning is a whistleblower. Manning will serve time for leaking documents that told all of us things that we needed to know about what was going on with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Who will not be doing any time is, of course, the lawyers who wrote the legal papers giving justification to America to torture, to kill, and otherwise. What's been lost in this whole thing is everyone says Manning shared these secrets, and he shouldn't have done that. Yeah, he did, but what we are forgetting, beyond the fact that Bush and Cheney and John Yoo and none of those guys are going to serve any time, we're all forgetting what we learned from the Manning leaks. And it's of great importance. I want to highlight a few of those things with respect to Chelsea Manning. There's six things I want to rattle off right away. These are from Matt Sludge over at the Huffington Post. The collateral murder Apache helicopter video. This video, I believe, is still available online. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it showed a video where an Apache helicopter attack on a group of people gathered in Baghdad. Two of the people that were killed were Reuters reporters. A member of the helicopter crew refers to the dead bastards he killed, and the crew lights up a passing van that stopped to help victims of the first round of gunfire. Reuters unsuccessfully requested a copy of the video under the Freedom of Information Act, concluded, and the military concluded that the helicopter crew had followed rules of engagement. You can see the video, and of course it's grainy video, it's kind of at night, and you can see them shooting, and you can see people going down, and you can see explosions happening, you can see them hitting the van. Yeah, you watched murder happen, and that came as a result of the Manning leaks. The Reykjavik 13 cable, far less known than the Apache video, this classified 2010 cable was from the U.S. Embassy in Reykjavik, released on February 8, 2010, the first of Manning's leaks to be published. It caused an immediate sensation in Iceland for its frank discussion of U.S. indifference toward problems in the small island nation's banking sector. This cable's release energized the activists in Iceland who edited the collateral murder video. Then there was the Iraq war logs. Manning gave WikiLeaks nearly 400,000 SIG acts from Iraq. They were published in October 2010. The Pentagon had always maintained that it did not keep track of civilian casualties in Iraq, but the independent Iraq body count website used the SIG acts to confirm and update its count of deaths in the conflict. As of this month, the organization had added 4,000 deaths to its database as a result of the Manning leaks and was likely to add another 10,000. That's quite a bit. These are things that we need to know. These and thousands of others just like them are known in the world today only because of Manning. The Afghanistan war logs. On July 25th, 2010, just a month after Manning was arrested, WikiLeaks published 75 SIG acts from the Afghanistan battlefield. The New York Times, which participated in their publication, said they offered an unvarnished ground-level picture of the war in Afghanistan, and that is in many respects more grim than the official portrayal. Detention, abuse, and torture. Manning's leaks included more than 700 Guantanamo detainee files, many revealing that the U.S. had little reason to continue holding prisoners. They also showed that the U.S. routinely failed to investigate reports of prisoner abuse and summary execution by the Iraq military. Obviously, the Democrats are still pushing to close Guantanamo. I am one of those people. I want it closed. And I think part of the reason that discussion is still happening over Guantanamo Bay is because of the Manning leaks. U.S. complicity with repressive Arab regimes. It was no surprise to many living in the Arab world that the United States routinely collaborated with Arab dictators behind closed doors while proclaiming its commitment to democracy in public. Manning's leaks of sensitive State Department cables, however, laid bare the American hypocrisy in the Middle East. In particular, the cables highlighted corruption within the regime of former Tunisian President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali. Whether it's cash, services, land, property, or yes, even your yacht. President Ben Ali's family is rumored to covet it and reportedly gets whatever it wants. With Tunisians facing rising inflation, high unemployment, these conspicuous displays of wealth and persistent rumors of corruption have only added to the fire. Manning's not the first, nor Snowden, nor will they be the last. But in defense of Chelsea Manning, formerly known as Bradley Manning, Thank you. Because so much of what happened with these two wars, now if you turned over to right-wing radio, there was very little discussion. And if you wanted to have a discussion about the wars, they accused you of being unpatriotic or not supporting the troops. Those were the actual phrases used for people that wanted to discuss our policies with respect to Iraq and Afghanistan. After the war waged on for a while, Obama came into office, said that he wanted to end both wars. We began talking about it more. And with the Manning leaks, they really got pushed front and center. So yeah, he's 25 right now. I believe 25, 28, somewhere in there. Excuse me. I had it in front of me a minute ago and I misplaced it. But so if he does his whole term, he'll be 60 when he gets out. He'll spend the rest of his young life and part of his middle-aged life in prison. But if that commander decides to commute his sentence down a little bit, or if the president just decides to forgive him at the end, he might get out sooner. But I'm counting on him being able to stay in longer. Now, or unfortunately having to stay in longer. We're going to cover more next week about Manning. Bradley Manning wanted to become Chelsea Manning, because now that Manning is in prison, Manning's going to want gender reassignment surgery. I don't know that this has come up before. And if it has come up before, I don't think it's ever come up with a case that's this high profile. So we'll bring you more on that next week. I want to go into Texas. This is the part of the show where I love debunking the right-wing myths. Let's talk Obamacare. Rick Perry seeks Obamacare funding for Texans. You heard that right. The guy who during the last presidential election, in one of the debates, said that he wanted to fully defund Obamacare, now saying, hey, how about you kick me down some of that money for the people of my state, because they're going to need some of that Obamacare, because we don't got that here in Texas. Texas Governor Rick Perry, a long-standing Obamacare critic, is negotiating a $100 million health care deal with the Obama administration, Politico reported on Tuesday. The Community First Choice program, aimed at improving the quality of health services for the elderly and disabled, was approved by the Texas legislature earlier this year. Perry health aides are now looking to the Obama administration for funding. Of course. Perry has been a strident Obamacare critic from the beginning, but his spokesman explained that the funding pitch is about aiding people with disabilities independent of the health insurance mandate. Right. Long before Obamacare was forced onto the American people, Texas was implementing policies to provide those with intellectual disabilities more community options to enable them to live more independent lives at a lower cost to taxpayers, Haven said in a statement. The Texas Health and Human Services Commission will continue to move forward with these policies because they are right for our citizens and our state, regardless of whatever funding schemes may be found in Obamacare. According to Politico, 12,000 Texans are expected to benefit from the program in its first year, beginning in September 2014. Rick Perry is openly saying, not in this story, but I've been hearing him, is openly saying we are not going to participate in the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, whatever you want to call it. While turning around and going, can we get some of that money? And then, of course, this guy, the head of the Texas Health and Human Services, is saying out loud, F Obamacare. Bad Obamacare. No Obamacare. But yo, can we get a little bit of that money? Of course you can. Of course you can. It seems to me that Texas, thanks to its regressive policies, is in a state of, catch this word, undevelopment. To think that in this day and age, in the richest nation in the world, or one of the richest nations in the world, certainly we're definitely one of the most developed, but that's going by the wayside because nobody really wants to spend any money on infrastructure anymore. So, I bring you this story. It's weird to me that everyone should get health care, right? Everyone should get health care. Everyone should want infrastructure. these things they benefit all of us. Texas is converting 80 miles of paved road to gravel thanks to lack of funds. Finding that thanks to shortfalls, the budget is not equipped to handle safety upgrades on paved roads. The Texas Department of Transportation began converting 80 miles of roads to gravel on Monday. They are undeveloping in Texas. The Texas DOT spokesman, David Glessner, told the Texas Tribune that the lack of funding meant its only option to make roads safer is to turn them into gravel roads. For safety reasons, some speed limits on those unpaved roads will be lowered to 30 miles an hour. According to America's Infrastructure Report Card, 38% of Texas roads are in poor to mediocre condition. After 3 special legislative sessions, lawmakers approved the constitutional amendment that does not raise taxes but asks voters to determine diverting money to a rainy day fund for transportation. So, hey, if you like those roads, if you think you might need them, you might use them one of these days. We're not going to make you pay taxes, but I don't know. You might want to consider kicking us down a few bucks for the roads. I don't know. Maybe we can. Don't worry, we won't get any of those unionized employees working on them, making a fair wage or anything. We'll just go south and get us some Mexicans, and we'll make them do it for $5 an hour, whatever. It's just lowest common denominator in the state of Texas, undeveloping. Much of the damage to Texas roads has been caused by oil field equipment hauled across the state. Now, this is interesting. Not only does Texas not have an income tax, which slows its economic growth, but it has not increased its gas tax in over 20 years, which would have helped fund the upkeep of roads. The spending gap also hurts Americans in less transparent ways than stripping down roads by costing jobs a tremendous amount of commute time. So you got to slow down to 30 miles an hour. It's going to take you longer to commute. And then the roads, which are being torn up by oil companies, the tax-dodging oil companies, well, they're just going to go ahead and unpave them. Because they're not going to ask you to pay for them, because that would involve a tax. They're not going to ask them to pay for it, the people who are tearing up the most with the really heavy equipment, with the really heavy oil equipment, because, that'd be digging into their profits. Texas isn't the only state doing this. And I don't know why this sounds like a good idea to anybody. But look, you there in Texas, after you get enough of your roads down to dirt roads, I used to be a mailman in Deer Park, Washington, Rural Route 2. And I drove at that time, or actually I still drive because I still own it. It's a 1978 right-hand drive Jeep. It's called a DJ5. And I put, when I bought the Jeep, it was in poor-ish condition and got the motor going and everything. And I noticed that the tires were a little worn down to the, you can see the wires inside. And I said, well, it's probably not safe to drive on. I'd say 50 of my 75-mile route was dirt roads. And so I went ahead and I put brand spanking new tires on it. 50,000-mile tires, I believe they were. And I worked with the post office for about, 6-7 months. And I noticed, and by the time I quit the post office, I noticed that those tires, which still look new-ish, I mean, they still got a lot of tread on them, but they are torn to hell. Those treads have big chunks taken out of them, or they started ripping, and it's not like a cheap tire. We have paved roads because it lets us go faster, it cuts our commute time, it doesn't tear up our tires, the rocks don't fly up and nick our cars, it doesn't, we don't create a lot of dust when we have paved roads. So, you there in Texas, you're going to have your unpaved roads, and you're going to have to slow down, and it's going to take you longer, it's going to tear up your tires, it's going to tear up your car, it's going to create a lot of dust, it's going to make your life miserable. I don't know, maybe then you want to pay taxes. Maybe not. I don't understand your thinking to begin with, quite honestly. Now, this blew my mind. A third of Louisiana Republicans blame Obama for Hurricane Katrina response under Bush. Should I say that again? Allow me. A third of Louisiana Republicans blame Obama for Bush's response during Katrina. Calming breath. Okay. So in a poll a PPP poll. No, excuse me, not PPP. Follow me. No, it is a PPP. Excuse me, it is a public policy polling survey. 29% of Louisiana Republicans said Obama was responsible for the Katrina response. 28% put the blame on George W. Bush, whose administration did in fact oversee the federal response to Katrina. Nearly half, 44% of Louisiana Republicans polled said they don't know who's to blame. Now, if I do the quick math on this, that's what, 70, almost three quarters of Republicans either blame Obama or don't know who to blame. There's a thing called confirmation bias, and I cover it. I use this phrase a lot, and it's pretty much the same thing as motivated reasoning. And it's really, in short, and its simplest terms, it's really where you choose your own reality. And they've chosen their own reality in Louisiana. Bush was heavily criticized at the time for the government's response to Katrina, a storm that caused 1,833 fatalities, damaged an estimated $81 billion in property, and ranks among the 5 deadliest hurricanes in United States history. Bush remained on vacation in Texas as the hurricane rocked the Gulf Coast before belatedly cutting his trip short, returning to Washington. An infamous photo of Bush peering out the window of Air Force One at the wreckage was also attacked as insensitive, and the former president himself later acknowledged that the photo was a huge mistake in a 2010 interview. Bush's approval ratings plunged in the months following the disaster. His administration was dogged by suggestions that race was a factor in its response efforts. I'm going to defend the Bush administration in just a minute. Yeah, you heard that correctly. Condoleezza Rice, who served as Bush's Secretary of State, recalled in her memoir that there was clearly a race problem during Katrina, although she disputed allegations that Bush or his administration were racist. There's a school of thought that the Bush administration's response was racist. There is a school of thought that says the Bush administration's response was economics. And I believe a strong case could be made for both. But quite honestly, it goes to a larger narrative that the Republicans push a lot. Government can't do anything right. So they say. Bush could have very easily, because they knew days ahead of time that the storm was coming and that they were going to need help. And Bush went on vacation. And after it hit and people were dying, drowning, starving, looting, stuck on their rooftops for days, he stayed on vacation and then finally came off of vacation. It's not that government can't do anything right, but people who don't believe in government can't govern. And that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to strengthen the narrative that government can't do anything. That's why he sat back. I don't think he goes, they're poor, they're black, to hell with them. Although it would have been interesting if they were white and wealthy. But if they're white and wealthy, they have the resources to get out of there. So that would have never been the case. And they say, well, they told them all to get out of Louisiana. Why didn't they just get out of Louisiana? Well, it's not that simple. A lot of them didn't have the resources. A lot of them didn't own cars. A lot of them had no way to get out of there. It really just went to the larger Republican narrative. The government can't do anything right. And then they really just wanted to prove the government can't do anything right. And worse than that, almost 3/4 of Republicans either blame Obama for the response, who was not president, and if I remember correctly, wasn't even a senator at the time. They blame Obama. Republicans, the 1/4 of you who blame Bush, good on you. There's a few of you out there that are at least partially honest. But those of you that blame Obama or don't know who was responsible for what? For Katrina? You people are out of your heads. And you're not honest. It looks like a bull has run its course. This from USA Today. Wal-Mart shares fall as they slash their outlook. Retail giant Wal-Mart same-store sales slipped 0.3%, widely missing analyst estimates of a 1% gain. The company, the world's largest retailer, also cut its annual profit outlook and earnings guidance Thursday as it continued to deal with a difficult economy and investigate potential overseas violations of federal anti-bribery law. For the full year, Walmart now expects to earn between $5.10 and $5.30 a share, whereas previously it thought it was going to earn as much as $5.40. The company said net sales for the full year are expected to grow between 2 and 3%, down from previous estimates of 5 to 6%. The retail environment remains challenging in the U.S. and our international markets as customers are cautious in their spending. Chris Hawley, Walmart's chief financial officer, said in a statement issued with the earnings reports. Here's what's missing from this story. Low wages equal low profits. Now, they've been able to pay their wages for some time, very low wages, but still been able to make lots of money. Look, what goes around comes around. And if you're not going to pay your employees a living wage, there was a study a number of years ago, and it showed that Walmart employees would not be able to survive if they had to buy their necessities from Walmart, as in Walmart doesn't even pay them enough. I believe the estimates for one Walmart store, one Walmart store costs taxpayers $900,000 a year in subsidies, which is because they pay so low, people have to go on welfare. People have to find other ways to get their medical care. And of course, they have to come to government because that's all that there is at that point. You know, if it's not your employer, I mean, the way our medical system is set up, and of course, they're not going to starve, or they go to rent-controlled housing. So, but all those things are subsidized by taxpayers. Walmart is costing us a ton of money because they don't want to pay a living wage. And they go, well, if we pay them a living wage, we'll have to raise prices. Fine. Raise prices. What's the problem? When our fellow Americans are not doing well, I don't care what's going on in your life. If they're not doing well, we're not doing well. And I'm not saying that everybody should get exactly the same, but I think if you're going to work a full-time job or nearly full-time, you should be paid a living wage. Definitely if you're working a full-time job, you should be paid a living wage. I don't think Walmart would have to raise prices though. The three Walmart heirs, the ones that walk away ultimately with the profit, they have more money. Those three people than the bottom 50%. It seems to me that they're doing fine. They are gajillionaires. They could be maybe billionaires instead, right? I know it's hard to live on $1 billion. They could be billionaires. They can make billions every year and pay their employees better. But they'd rather do this. So, yeah, you know what, Walmart, your outlook is going to continue to fall. And until you pay your employees better. Look, you pay your employees better, you say, well, I have to pay them a higher wage. Yeah, but they'll be able to shop there. And you won't look like a scumbag to everybody else. Let's talk gentrification. Upper West Side condo has separate entrances for the rich and the poor. This is interesting. This is more subsidizing. The port will use a separate door under plans for a new Upper West Side luxury tower where affordable housing will be segregated from ritzy waterfront condos despite being in the same building. Manhattan developer Extel is seeking millions in air rights and tax breaks for building 55 low-income units at 40 Riverside Boulevard, but the company is requesting that cash-poor tenants who make lucrative incentives possible use a different door. 5 floors of affordable housing will face away from the Hudson River and have a separate entrance, elevator, and maintenance company, while 219 market rate condominiums will overlook the waterfront. Now, the company is applying for the city's inclusionary housing program, which gives developers more floor area in exchange for building on or off-site affordable housing. But instead of building a larger condo, Exdale plans to sell the bonus floor area to another building within a half mile of the site. Pardon me. Real estate attorneys say such a sale could be worth millions. Exdale is also seeking a controversial 421A exemption, a tax break given to developers who include affordable housing in their market rate buildings. In October, the Post reported that 5 of the luxury firm's towers cost the city $21.8 million in tax revenue in their first year alone. Extel, of course, has declined to comment. So here's what they're doing. They want to build this incredibly ritzy building. One entrance for the rich, one entrance for the poor. And the only reason they're allowing the poor to live in this building is so that they can get the tax breaks. So once again, you're going to pay their tax bill. And they're only putting the poor, they're only letting the poor rent in there because they're going to get a tax break. Now, the low income will go for $845 a month for a one bedroom, or two bedrooms for $1,099. But the condos for the fat cats will cost them, the ones who buy it, $1,000 per square foot. Okay? One bedrooms will sell for a whopping $1.3 million. So they're going to make a monster amount of profit. And they're going to get a tax break. And poor come in the back door in the alley. Rich come in the front. This is in New York City. Out freaking rageous. You can't make this stuff up. This is happening in your country. Last week, the Republican National Committee officially enshrined their complaint about a pair of Hillary Clinton-related film projects that are in pre-production in a resolution that holds the organization will neither participate in nor sanction in any GOP primary debates staged by NBC or CNN, the two broadcasters that are slated to air these films. Yeah. So Priebus is saying that they're not going to... Here, let me read this. Members of the Hillary Clinton camp, however, worry that the TV series are more likely to hurt than to help their candidate in the likely event she decides to run. They calculate that Republicans are already, in the words of one pundit, working the refs, which is an old Lee Atwater term, meaning the networks now would have to bend over backward to avoid turning the programs into flattering portraits, and they note that the director of the CNN program is Charles Ferguson, who won an Academy Award for Inside Job, a scathing documentary of the Wall Street financial crisis. That film cast blame in part on key figures in Bill Clinton's administration of their roles in the events leading up to the crash. So here's the thing. Reince Priebus is saying, if NBC or CNN shows these, then we are not going to let them host any of our debates. Okay, let's go back to working the refs. This was Lee Atwater's term, and it said, he called it working the refs because, and the Republicans do this all the time, if you accuse every single outlet of being liberal, they will bend over backwards to not be liberal, even if they're not being liberal. That's working the refs. Okay, so these films, now, if these films probably won't get made, which will be a win for Hillary Clinton. I'll tell you why in a minute. But if these films get made, because I believe that part of the crash was what do they call it? Graham Bleach Bliley, which passed in '99, okay, and was signed by Clinton, okay, because that deregulated markets and that made derivatives legal, okay. So part of the crash gets to go to the Republicans at the end of Clinton's administration who drew this bill up, and then Clinton who signed it, okay, and then of course all the deregulation that happened under Bush, which ultimately just put the top on the cake, lit the fuse on the bomb, however you want to say it. So if these films come out, it could show the small but significant role that the Clinton administration played in the crash, the recession that began in 2008. So Reince Priebus is screaming about these things. He says, we're not going to go on NBC or CNN if you guys put these things out there. Really, Reince, listen, you could benefit from this, okay? And if these things don't get made now, it's going to be a win for the Clintons. You should shut your mouth, Priebus, if you really want to win. But here's the bigger and better thing. These things are being produced by Fox, or they were going to be produced by Fox. A couple of days ago, according to Politico, Fox had dropped out of production because they said, well, NBC, CNN, fine, you don't like them anyway because they're not Fox. Hey, did you know Fox is producing these things? And Priebus said nothing. Hey. Let's see if they get made. It's pretty obvious that Hillary Clinton is going to be running for president, and Priebus doesn't know what the hell he's doing. So go. The Democrats, thank you for your help. Reince Priebus. Okay. I want to get into my DM. My DM, Chris Christie, and then some good news. GOP congressman to constituents. It would be a dream come true to write a bill to impeach Obama. Representative Kerry Bentivolio, Republican from Michigan, became the latest House Republican to suggest that he'd like to impeach President Barack Obama, telling a disappointed constituent on Monday that he would file such a bill if he could find the evidence to make it stick. Remember that word, evidence, because an impeachment is an indictment. You can't impeach somebody just because you don't like them. I continue. You know, if I could write that bill and submit it, it would be a dream come true, he said in response to a question at a town hall meeting reported by BuzzFeed. I feel your pain. I know. I stood 12 feet away from the guy and listened to him, and I couldn't stand being there because he is the president, and I have to respect the office, and that's my job as a congressman. I need to respect the office. So saying I can't wait to impeach that guy is respect for the office. Cute. Bentivolio said that he'd followed up with lawyers to find out how he could pursue such an effort to impeach the president. He told his constituents he would need hard evidence to do so. Impeachment equals indictment. There's been a lot of people standing on bridges as of late. It's a teabagger campaign, and I saw it in my local city. And they get up on these bridges, by the way, which are, if you know the state of bridges in America, they're crumbling right now, okay? But a bunch of these teabaggers get up on bridges, and they're holding up these gargantuan banners saying, impeach Obama. You know what? I don't know that those bridges can hold all you teabaggers, and the fact that you don't see the irony in getting up on those crumbling bridges and holding up a banner saying, let's get rid of the president, the guy who wants to spend the infrastructure money to fix those very bridges, and you want to impeach him for what? I've covered this before. Most Americans have a fundamental misunderstanding of what an impeachment is. It is an indictment. You can't say, I don't like him, indict him. It's not the way it works. Till we have evidence, you're only going to become the laughingstock if you've submitted the bill to impeach the president because, number one, you've got to convince the press, the congressman said. And there are people out there, no matter what Obama does, he's still the greatest president they've ever had, and that's what you're fighting. See, that's a cop-out. Because I voted for Obama, and I don't think he's the greatest president. I've got my issues with him, too. I don't think he's worth impeaching, though. I'm sorry, he isn't. Okay? Some of these things that are going on with the drone strikes, yeah, you know what? If enough comes out about that, I will lead the charge on impeachment because that's my number one complaint right now. He's doing a lot of things I like. I like Obamacare. I like the fact that he wants to close Guantanamo. Okay, and he's now starting to talk about making college affordable. I like those things, but drones are killing innocent people. That I do not like. So even I've got my issues with him. No one says he's the greatest president in the world. And anyone who says he's the greatest president ever has got problems. Because he's not. I don't think he's bad, but he's not the greatest. Chris Christie vetoed a proposed .50 caliber rifle ban that he once supported. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie vetoed legislation on Friday that would have banned .50 caliber rifles from the state, despite backing that same proposal just a few months ago. In April 2013, Christie recommended banning the sale of Beretta .50 caliber semi-automatic rifles as part of the group's proposal to curb gun violence. But on Friday, Christie said the ban wouldn't make the Garden State any more safe. Tellingly, the legislator points to no instance of this class of firearms being used even by a single criminal in New Jersey, he said. The wide scope of this total ban, therefore, would not further public safety, but would only interfere with lawful recreational pastimes. Okay, let's talk. The .50 caliber bullet, which is it's a really expensive bullet. It comes out of a pretty powerful weapon. If you've ever seen one, they're huge. Oh, I heard Rachel Maddow compare them to a carrot. Yeah, they're huge. And one of these bullets, which I believe, because the military uses a lot of these, this is a war weapon, and it should always be a war weapon. One of these bullets could take down a multi-million dollar piece of aircraft if it hit it in a critical enough area. Nobody is protecting themselves with .50 caliber bullets because it's not just going to hit a person, it's going to disintegrate them. You're not hunting with them because if you are, there's not going to be any meat left. This is basic, simple, common sense gun reform. This isn't taking away anyone's guns. This is just removing bullets that are the size of swords. I know I'm exaggerating here. But even that, we can't get it done. I've said before on this show that I like Christie. There's once again a lot of things I don't like. And if he really wants to run for president, he is going to have to show some leadership. This was a simple thing that almost nobody would have complained about. And the people that would have complained about it are nuts anyway. A bunch of paranoid freaks. 50 caliber bullets? You're not hunting, nor are you protecting yourself with that. And he still couldn't get it done. Shame, shame, Christie. Shame, shame. Let us get into some good news. California's Assembly Bill 1266 for transgender student rights has been signed by Governor Jerry Brown in California. He signed the groundbreaking bill, which would allow transgender youth to use whatever bathroom and participate in whatever sports team they believe matches their gender identity. As the Associated Press reported last month, California's Assembly Bill 1266 gives students in public K-12 schools the right to participate in sex-segregated programs, activities, and facilities based on their self-perception, regardless of their birth gender. Although Massachusetts, Connecticut, Washington, and Colorado have adopted policies designed to protect transgender students, California becomes the first state to address the issue with a statewide law, scheduled to take effect January 1st, 2014. Meanwhile, Brown's move quickly drew praise from the state's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community. That's the LGBT community. I'm so excited that California is making sure transgender students have a fair chance to graduate and succeed, said an 18-year-old transgender student in an email statement. I should have graduated this year, but my school refused to give me the same opportunity to succeed as other boys. Now other transgender youth won't have to choose between being themselves and graduating high school. Most conservative pundits felt very differently. Of course, they took this apart on Fox News. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this story, obviously, this is a great story. And equality is on the move. It truly is. But there's this, and then there's Chelsea Manning. It's going to be interesting how that turns out. You know, I see these two stories kind of dovetailing a little bit. But good on you, Jerry Brown. There's a new push to raise Seattle's minimum wage to $15 an hour. Washington already has the nation's highest state minimum wage at $9.19 an hour. Now there's a push in Seattle at least to make it $15. That would mean fast food workers, retail clerks, barista, and other minimum wage workers would get what protesters demanded when they shut down a handful of city restaurants in May and others called for when they demonstrated nationwide in July. So far, the city council and mayoral candidates have said they'd consider it. One said, however, that it may not be soon. So this isn't at the top of there. But it's being discussed. Venture capitalist Nick Hanauer said there's no time to waste. What the nation needs is money in the hands of regular consumers. A higher minimum wage is a very simple and elegant solution to the death spiral of falling demand that is the signature feature of our economy, he said. Yes. So we covered a few weeks ago the fast food workers who, by the way, can't afford to protest, but they are. Okay? And then we have a venture capitalist that says, look, we need to get the money into the hands of regular people because that's who's going to spend it. Giving more money to billionaires doesn't make billionaires spend more money. They just throw it onto the pile. We need to get money into the hands of regular people. Boom. Some business advocates say a higher minimum wage will make it harder for companies in Seattle to survive. They cite Wal-Mart, which has all but refused to accept a Washington, D.C. Decision to raise the minimum wage to $12.50 an hour in big box stores. Walmart, the evil W. You don't even want to pay $12.50 an hour. Really? Come on, Walmart. San Francisco currently has the highest minimum wage at $10.50 an hour. Economist Chris Benner of the University of California at Davis does not agree that a higher minimum wage would lead to job losses. Now, that's a very important thing because that's very much a part of the conservative narrative. So, good on you, Seattle. It may not happen, but you're putting it on the front burner. Well, the people are. City council's kind of teetering. I think that they're just testing the water right now. But this could happen, and this should happen. Fair wages, and then money in the hands of regular people. Good on you, Seattle. We're pulling for you. Green German government battles to keep fossil power plants running. I've covered this a little bit, and I've had quite a few discussions with people in online forums, but Germany is the cloudiest country in the world, and they get most of their power from solar. The German government is engaged in an increasingly heated negotiations with energy power companies in an effort to stop them from closing carbon-emitting power plants, which have been rendered unprofitable by the national renewable policies. Last week, power giant RWE grumbled that many of its coal and gas power stations are no longer profitable to operate and said it will be closing some of them down. Its rival, E.ON, that's E.ON, also said that it had plants working for nothing and announced plant shutdowns. The problem for fossil fuel power plants is the rise of renewables, particularly in Germany, and the fact that government policies mean that whenever a renewable plant generates any power, it will take priority on the grid. Okay, that means fossil fuel plants get to sell less electricity and causes their cost to rise. So, when it's generated by solar, when it's generated by wind, it takes precedence on the grid, and it goes out first. And most of what's being created is being created by those. Unfortunately, German renewables still generate just 25% of the country's electricity requirement over time, and worse, they are not controllable. They produce power when the wind blows and when the sun shines, and not when the grid needs it. There's still no way to store electricity on the scales demanded by a major national grid, so the fossil power plants are still completely essential for Germany to keep its lights on. So they're afraid to shut it down because it's generally the way that they've done things. Obviously, it's the way the whole world has done things. Okay, and they're getting so much power from wind and solar right now, but they're keeping the coal-fired plants open for a backup, even though they're not profitable. And they say, well, also it's a little unpredictable how much sun and wind we're going to get, but they're keeping them open. Look, when people talk about solar and people talk about wind, they're not saying kill all carbon burning, sources of. No, that's not what they're saying. But it's an all of the above strategy. I've had this discussion with a few folks. I believe I even had it with my dad one time. And he goes, hey, you can't get all the power from solar. You can't get all the power from wind. You're right. You know why? Because there's so many people, and that's fine. But we shouldn't only be doing coal for electricity. We shouldn't only be doing oil for our cars. We should find a way to do electric cars, and we are. There's a lot of them happening right now. Tesla announced last week that in the next 4 years, they are going to have an electric car that's affordable, which is great, because right now, a new Tesla, after tax breaks, is about $47,000. Most people aren't buying a car at that price. Okay, if we get electric cars and solar panels, we could get our cars completely off of, get rid of most foreign oil. And then the few internal combustion engines that we have that are things like lawnmowers, small engines like that, yeah, they can continue to burn. They can continue to burn gasoline, but we won't be burning it in our cars. Get all those cars off of that oil. Speaking of solar panels, the White House confirmed to the Washington Post on Thursday that the installation of solar panels began this week on the first family's residence. The plan to use solar energy was first revealed in October 2010, but was not put into effect until now. During a Green Gov symposium at George Washington University, then Energy Secretary Stephen Chu announced the plan to install American-made solar panels in the spring of 2011. Okay, American-made. This project reflects President Obama's strong commitment to U.S. leadership in solar energy and the jobs it will create here at home, Chu said at the time. Deploying solar energy technologies across the country will help America lead the global economy for years to come. This is not the first attempt to include solar panels in the White House's energy mix. In 1979, President Jimmy Carter installed solar panels on the roof, which were then taken down by Ronald Reagan in 1986. Ronald Reagan, who is owned by energy companies. No one should have ever taken down the panels that Jimmy Carter put on the roof, 350.org founder Bill McKibben said in an emailed press statement. But it's very good to know that once again the country's most powerful address will be drawing some of that power from the sun. Good on Obama for putting back up the solar panels that were initially put up by Carter and then taken down by Reagan. Good on you, Obama. And this is one of those Obama things that I like, you know. Anthony Weiner on a roll. Here come the Carlos Danger Dogs. From the It Had to Happen files comes word that a new company taking advantage of the sexting saga of New York City mayoral candidate Anthony Weiner is marketing Carlos Danger Wieners. The hot dog marketing company was cooked up by Randall Richards, chief executive of Orlando-based Web Dominators LLC, and Thrushwood Farms Quality Meats, a family-owned farm in Illinois, according to ABC News. Together, they've launched Carlos Danger LLC, and by the way, you can look that up on the internet. It is carlosdangerwieners.com. The company is now in talks to sell the wieners at Publix and Wal-Mart stores. According to ABC, it will also provide wiener girls to host tailgate and nightclub parties. ABC said the wiener campaign did not return a call seeking comment. This I want to read you this. This comes from the website, and this just made me laugh. since we're having fun here. With a Carlos Danger wiener, you can have the most unique pleasure of a taste that you won't want to pull out of your mouth. A Carlos Danger wiener rises to any occasion. Go to this website, carlosdangerwieners.com. Holy hell. There are many ways to enjoy your Carlos Danger wiener. You can jerk it with a jerk sauce, plump it up or pull it, or just figure it out on your own. Always use a leather wiener holder, which ensures you will get the most out of your wiener experience. Eat your wiener stuffed in a hot bun or just by itself. All Carlos Danger products are 100% approved by the Carlos Danger Secret Online Wiener Society. So grab one and make it your own today. We have to have fun with these things because it's required. Carlos Danger LLC. Now I want to do my final thought, and this is going to inflame a lot of folks, but that's just what we have to do on this show from time to time. My final thought this week is terrorists or Republicans. The line between these two groups is getting very, very fuzzy. We covered a couple of weeks ago the January 20th, 2009 meeting where here's the guest list: Frank Luntz, Paul Ryan, Eric Cantor, Kevin McCarthy, Pete Sessions, Jeb Henserling, Pete Hoekstra, Dan Lundgren, Jim DeMint, John Kyle, Tom Coburn, John Ensign, Bob Corker, and Newt Gingrich, all Republicans, got together the night during the first Obama administration when he was being sworn into office. They met at the caucus room in Washington, D.C., and during that 4-hour meeting, they decided that they were going to, while Americans were suffering, continue to crash the economy and stop anything that Obama wanted to do. They said that we have to show unyielding opposition to every one of the president's policy ideas. And they've done so. And they've done so up to this point with hundreds of filibusters. And that was a time when filibusters were incredibly rare. Sometimes once a session. They've used hundreds to stop everything that Obama wanted to do. You say terrorist. You can't accuse them of being terrorists, Melvin. You're right, I can't. But I can make a hell of a case. Taliban insurgency. We understand perhaps a little bit more because of the Taliban. This is a quote. Insurgency is the way they went about systematically understanding how to disrupt and change a person's entire process. And these Taliban is an example of how you go about to change a person from their messaging to their operations to their frontline message. And we need to understand that insurgency may be required when dealing with the other side, said Representative Republican Kevin McCarthy. Taliban insurgency. Let's go a little further with this. If the terrorists were poisoning our water, we'd be up in arms. However, oil companies are with fracking and with dumping their waste in the water. And they're being enabled by Republican legislators. If terrorists were poisoning our air, we'd be up in arms. Stop the terrorists. They're poisoning our air. Our kids are breathing that in and they're dying or they're getting cancer. But when coal and the fossil fuel industry put that stuff in the air, enabled by Republicans, or just given permission that they don't have to clean up after themselves, that's just fine. If we had a propaganda network that was dedicated to terrorist messages, we'd be absolutely up in arms. Terrorist messages just running all day. Yet, the Kochs, the Cato Institute, Americans for Prosperity, these are propaganda groups. Fox is propaganda. There was a study a while ago that people who watch zero news whatsoever, are vastly more informed than people who watch Fox News. If they took over American cities, if terrorists took over American cities, can you imagine the rage that would be pouring out of your fellow Americans? Kill them now. People would be shouting. These gun nuts would be taking up arms. We will kill them ourselves. Yet, in Michigan, in North Carolina, a lot of their cities now have emergency managers, which is where the Republican governor swoops in and says, everybody who was elected, you can stay in your elected office, but you mean nothing now. You can't do anything. This entire city will be run by this one Republican, which I am appointing. That's an emergency manager. He takes over the city. They still have elections. You can still vote for who you want, but it doesn't matter. It's whoever the Republican governor picks. Dictator. If they destroyed our economy, if terrorists set out to destroy our economy, and by the way, they did. In an op-ed piece that Osama bin Laden wrote back in the late 90s, which appeared in the New York Times, Osama bin Laden said, I cannot take on the American military. Too big, too strong, too powerful. But you know what I can do? I can break them, and I can break them financially. Carry out a terrorist attack. This was his plan. Carry out a terrorist attack. And then every single place that they raised an Al-Qaeda flag, they knew that we would spend resources there. He said, I can't beat the American military, but I can wear them down financially. So, if the terrorists destroyed our economy, we would be up in arms. Out of our minds. But deregulating the banks, letting Wall Street do whatever they want, and then Graham Leach Bliley from the late 90s, these things pass, these things lead to crashing our economy, and we're okay with it. We don't need Al-Qaeda. We have Republicans. And they've admitted, for this meeting that happened in the caucus room, restaurant in Washington, D.C., the night that Obama was elected during his first term, they admitted that they're going to use a Taliban insurgency. Their words, not mine. We don't need Al-Qaeda. We have Republicans. But I believe something. And unfortunately, this is at least 99% of the Republican Party right now, which I think at some point they will eventually go through a change. Well, they will have to become the loyal opposition, but not be so hell-bent on destroying America. I personally am conservative on some things. I am liberal on most things. I don't believe any one party has the answer. But the Republicans actively working to destroy the country, even if it's just for political gain, it's not okay. I have a belief about America. And that is that America will never be destroyed from without. Not an occupying force, not a threatening army, never. This, of course, doesn't cover act of God. America will only be destroyed from within. And if we elect a president who ignores a major American city, Louisiana, New Orleans, Katrina, while that city is drowning. If we elect the Republicans who promise from the depths of their heart to do an awful job, and then they do it, we are helping destroy America from within. This isn't to say Democrats have all the answers, because my goodness, they do not. But this is to say that if someone is using terrorist language, making terrorist threats. By the way, the debt fight is coming up in October, and the Republicans are talking about shutting down the government. What? If terrorists shut down our government, ladies and gentlemen, would you not be up in arms? You would. You know you would. Why is it any difference with a major American political party? I want to thank you for joining me for this week's edition of The Fire You Can't Put Out. Shout out to Leo, shout out to Kevin, and shout out to Angela, my co-host, who could not be with us this week. Ladies and gentlemen, be well, take care of yourselves and each other. We are the fire you can't put out, and we will prevail. Be strong, be vigilant. Get out there and get involved in your democracy. Thank you so much for your support. My name is Melvin. This has been episode 31. Good night.